Greetings everyone, this is Sasha. We are here once again to continue to share with you information in this contact series. Today's topic that we would like to talk about we're calling the myths of contact. And basically what this means is that it is belief systems about the contact experiences that humans hold that very often shape or distort or limit the contact experience. And very often these belief systems are unconscious. So they might be even held in deeper levels of the unconscious whereby the experiencer might not be realizing that those belief systems are affecting their experience of contact. So we're going to explore some myths today, but of course the myths we're going to talk about today are certainly not the only ones that exist. They are the ones for now that we are excited to talk about, and we hope that perhaps the information that we will give you will help you take a deep look at your own contact experience and perhaps how maybe some subtle belief systems that you might have are shaping your experience. So the first myth that we want to talk about is probably one that has been talked about many, many times, but it has to do with the belief that humans have that contact will happen in a way that humans understand. So the idea then of verified or validated contact, so to speak, up until now very often has taken the shape of having certain definitions of what is considered real and what is considered unreal. And of course the more left brain aspects of your society in the science realm perhaps have even more rigid definitions of what valid contact is. But the truth of the matter is, as you well know, that contact itself is an interdimensional experience. It's a transdimensional experience, meaning that it takes place on many different dimensional realities, and many of those dimensional realities are overlapped. Therefore, the experiences that are coming to you that are sourced from other dimensions of reality cannot and should not adhere to the definitions of your reality. So what you're going to find then from the human experience is that these types of contacts are going to make the whole contact subject seem very elusive, such as, you know, just using an example, light balls or things popping in and out of your reality and not being able to be photographed or not, in a sense, being able to be grasped. This has caused a lot of frustration within the contact community, but at the same time, we have to say that because these experiences are in a sense increasing now, it's a good sign to show you that in a sense the veils are thinning between realities and more is, so to speak, popping in. Now in many books and other lectures we've given in the past, we've already talked about the different levels of consciousness of many of the beings and things such as that. So we're not really going to go into that today. We're more going to look at this idea from the point of view of humans themselves. So this myth then that contact is supposed to happen in a way that humans understand is something that is very, very slowly beginning to change. But when you feel the frustration in contact experiences, that's really kind of a signpost telling you that there is an unconscious belief system that's still, in a sense, dictating the way you should be experiencing contact, rather than accepting the way that you are experiencing contact. So as you evolve then into the contact experience, one needs to move from the shoulds, I should be experiencing it this way, to instead the experience of I am experiencing it this way, even if I don't understand it. When beings such as myself or other beings, perhaps even of less dense energy, who are non-physical, for example, attempt to interface with your reality, there is often a signal, let's say, or a signature that happens when two realities interface. You have called those signatures high strangeness or some type of phenomena that you don't understand. And we're going to talk about that in another video. But we just want you to know that if you are beginning to experience things that you don't really understand, that you can't fit in the box, it's actually, paradoxically, a very good sign. So also part of this myth of contact having to happen in a way that humans understand is that there can be sometimes an assumption that the beings that are contacting you are like you, meaning that they can walk into a room on two legs and shake your hand, so to speak. But very often, especially these days, the contact energy is being sourced not just from beings with two arms and two legs, Pleiadian as examples, such as myself, but it's also being sourced from the level of pure consciousness. And that level of pure consciousness is not attached to a body, so to speak. So therefore, there's no nuts and bolts craft. Very often, though, you might see plasma ships or light crafts that are, in a sense, manifestations of consciousness itself, but do not have necessarily the physical skin and bones body, so to speak, attached to that experience. This is beginning to happen more and more, and we are really encouraging you then to expand your lexicon of contact, so to speak, in such a way that you can begin to allow for these types of contact that are not attached to a craft or attached to a body, but instead are simply contact through pure consciousness itself. Now this leads us into the next idea then. If consciousness is contacting you, how can it interface or how can it communicate? Well, pointing out the obvious here, the channeling experience is one such form of contact. We understand, though, that many of you who are doing contact work might receive messages and you might not trust yourself, or you might worry that the ego is coloring it in some way, and all of those concerns are quite natural. So we would say that if you start to receive contact that is non-physical in that way, from consciousness to consciousness, you can do a little trick of, once you receive it, maybe kind of push it away a little bit, and if it comes back, or if it is expounded upon, then that is really a signal, let's say, for you to be still and to listen. So channeling is one alternate form of contact that comes in a way maybe that humans are still a little bit insecure about. Also, you're going to find that sometimes non-physical consciousness may use machines to communicate, such as blinking lights or making sounds on radar detectors and things such as that. Or sometimes that machinery will just respond spontaneously, where it's not necessarily a message, it's just reacting to the interface of the entrance of a new consciousness into your reality. You're also going to find that sometimes communication can come through environmental signals, such as a sudden wind or a sudden drop in temperature. And again, sometimes those are things that are deliberately used as communication by the consciousness on the other end, but other times the environment is simply just responding to the contact energy that is in the area. And of course, the more subtle forms of contact, which maybe might be a little bit disconcerting for humans because sometimes we find that you question yourself about it, is contact that you feel either in emotional or energetic ways. This is actually very, very common in terms of forms of contact. But at the same time, it's very often the kind of contact that is pushed away by humans more often than any other kind of contact. This will change, though, as you begin to trust yourself and as you begin to move more deeply into the contact experience. You will start to understand that these types of emotional and energetic perceptions within you are like your internal barometer that helps you connect to the contact experience. So we're really going to encourage you to pay more and more attention to that in the future. Okay, so that was the first myth that we wanted to talk about, which has to do with how contact would happen in a way humans understand, that myth number one. And that is not always the case, and actually more often not the case. Okay, myth number two then, and this is something we've addressed many, many, many times. We're going to say it again, maybe sound like a broken record, but it has to do with the idea of the categorization of the contact that comes to you, meaning these are the good guys, I want contact with them. These are the bad guys, I don't want contact with them. We understand that that perception comes very deeply from the human polarized reality. And especially for individuals, maybe who have not done a lot of inner work in terms of integrating their inner polarity or shadow work within themselves, then that type of belief system of the contact experience is often projected onto the experience itself. However, we can tell you with all surety that any of us beings who are working so diligently to help you open to this contact experience and at the same time help you evolve your consciousness, we are expressing the energy of our reality, which is not polarized in the same way you see on Earth. So this idea of being attached to the good guys and the bad guys is really only applicable in a third density reality that is still clinging to polarized thought. It is not that way up there, so to speak. And this brings us also then to kind of a subset of this myth, which has to do with the idea that all the ET races that are worth contacting, so to speak, are, number one, human type, meaning 2 arms, 2 legs. And to take that even further, especially old-fashioned contact belief systems, that the highest level beings are the ones that are Caucasian and blue eyes and blonde hair and all of that nonsense, so to speak. While there are, of course, extraterrestrial beings who fit that profile, they are by far not the majority of beings who are working with you. As you well know, at least philosophically, they come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. And not all of them have 2 arms and 2 legs, let alone what you know of as skin to have color itself, so to speak. So we want this idea then of this myth of categorizations and good guys and bad guys, and the white guys are the best ones, the higher consciousness, and the other ones are lower in consciousness. That idea, again, is kind of extending the belief systems of polarity on the human level. We have to say, though, joyfully, that we see that old paradigm really beginning to shatter. That paradigm of contact was more active in the 50s, if you will, the 1950s, and gradually over time has begun to weaken. However, there are still some, in a sense, strongholds that hold on to that perception. So we will simply just remind you then to remember that this is really kind of an unconscious belief system that's held within the mass consciousness that is in the process of transforming, which is one of the reasons why you're seeing some factions on your planet of humans, in a sense, clinging more to that sense of what you call racism on Earth, or the fear of the other that is somewhat irrational. So that is myth number 2. Myth number 3 is the idea that real contact, the real stuff, not the woo-woo stuff you can't put in a box, the real contact, we are being facetious of course, will always leave evidence that can be authenticated. This belief system that has been perpetuated on your world, especially within ufology circles, is really a dead-end idea. Because many of us ETs in the past have deliberately left behind what you call evidence for the purposes of seeing how humanity would deal with it. And what we have found is that in the end, no matter how authenticated evidence is, there are groups on your world who, in a sense, hijack the evidence and distort the meanings of it, or steal the evidence, or discredit the person who has the evidence, etc., etc. You know this story. We do not have to repeat it. Therefore, from the extraterrestrial point of view, we have come to the understanding that leaving you evidence, so to speak, is not being of service to you for the highest good, because it does nothing to, in a sense, shift your consciousness, but instead it feeds into more of the polarity on your planet that keeps the withholding of knowledge still something that continually perpetuates. So at this point now, what you're going to find is that evidence, and we use the term in quotes because it is very much a tongue-in-cheek from our point of view idea. Evidence has more to do with experience that you have as humans that shifts your consciousness. So for instance, if you take a photo and you were, let's say, taking a picture of the sunset and you didn't see anything, but when you look at the photo, you see a ship. That is not meant to be taken to a lab to analyze, to be analyzed and to be argued over. It's meant instead for you to have an aha inner moment where you can have something tangible that acts as a doorway so that you can make the connection with us for yourself. So the evidence in that sense then that has come up these days is more geared toward the idea of personal assistance for personal evolution, for personal connection. And as this begins to happen more and more on the individual level, you're going to find that on the collective level, the need for objective evidence will get less and less, and the feeling or the sense of being connected, even without the evidence, will get stronger and stronger. So it is a gentle evolutionary process. However, we will say we do see that it is, let's say, accelerating, meaning more and more photos, more and more experiences that are meant for you as individuals to shift you into a new understanding and a new level of consciousness. Okay, myth number 4 then. Humans can call ETs anytime, or humans can control the contact experience. Well, we're going to give you a funny analogy. Let's say you call your mother on the telephone and she does not pick up. Would you conclude then that she does not exist? Or that she is ignoring you because you are a lowly human? Or that you are maybe not doing something right to force the communication? Of course you would not realize that. So the contact experience is very similar. We have spoken to many, many people over the decades who had this unconscious belief that if they could just find the right button to push, the right mantra or the right meditation or the right color laser or the right drum beat, whatever it is, if they could just find that right thing, we would come. And again, that is a myth. It does not work like that. From our point of view of the contact experience, this is a long process that we are assisting you with to help you begin to open your consciousness and become flexible in your ability to travel within the quantum realms so that you can see us for who we really are, rather than for who your society or those in fear on your world would project us to be. So it's not that you haven't found the right formula for ET contact. It is all simply a matter of timing. You cannot control the experience, but what you can do is choose to be an active, joyful, willing participant in the process with us. And that is going to assist you in accelerating the process and ease the process for humanity to awaken to these greater truths. Okay, myth number 5 then has to do with disclosure. And that is a buzzword we know that is on your planet now. Many of you talk about it. And we found that there's a belief that disclosure is seen as the ultimate goal. It's the thing you should shoot for, because then everyone will believe. And we understand how humans can see that this would be an effective strategy, so to speak. But from our point of view, as we look at your planet with objective eyes, let's say, we see that the idea of what you call disclosure right now, in this time, in this environment on your world, would actually be a disservice. This is because you are very, very polarized, and there are many, many factions within what you call the agencies who would be doing the disclosing, whether those agencies are military, intelligence, governmental, whatever. So within those agencies, you're going to find various motivations for the idea of disclosure. And those motivations range from the desire to enter the new age of universal connections, all the way down to those agencies who want apocalypse or who want the second coming, and they see this controlling of the narrative as a way to get there. And there is everything in between. So until humanity has made the connections for themselves and have, in a sense, disclosed the reality of contact to themselves, external disclosure actually becomes a disservice because it is a narrative that can be controlled by those who are in fear, or by those who are in greed, or by those who wish to have power over the narrative in some way. Therefore, we say, go forth, go out, do your own contact work, be your own disclosure. That is the disclosure movement that will shift the consciousness on your world. And we know many of you are already doing this. And this leads us then to myth number 6, which is kind of just connected to what we've been talking about, but it has to do with that there is a subconscious inherent trust of those perhaps who say they worked in the intelligence community, or they worked at various Area 51 facilities or things like that, who have inside knowledge. And then that knowledge is sought and it shapes the narrative of the contact experience. And we've found that narrative shaped by those ideas are actually quite off track. The reason for this is that many of those people who work in those facilities are only given compartmentalized information. So while they might have a snapshot into the bigger picture, they really only have a snapshot. And sometimes their own consciousness will fill in the blanks based on what they think they know. Also, we have to say that when some of those individuals are working in those places, sometimes they are given information that is not true deliberately, so if it should leak out, it muddies the waters, so to speak. Therefore, we would say not to distrust those people who say these ideas, but instead to take it with a grain of salt, to put it on your shelf and revisit it if you need to, but do not let it shape your narrative, because the only narrative for you that matters is your personal contact experience. All right, so those are 6 myths that we wish to explore today. The conclusion of what we wish to say today is something we have already just said, which has to do with, to know the truth of contact, you must experience it. You must seek it. You must experience it yourself. And remember what we've talked about in previous videos about the contact mirror. You will always see yourself reflected in that mirror. If you see polarity in the contact mirror, look within to heal that polarity. Let yourself be the person on the forefront of your own contact landscape. And in that way, it will be an experience that is authentic beyond anything, any narrative that can be fed to you from the outside. And that includes even what we are saying to you today as well. All right, until next time, thank you very much for your attention, and we send you much love.